Good day, students. In this tutorial, we're going to cover how to start building a Revit building model. Now we're going to have a Revit site model where you're going to do a lot of site work and site intervention. You're going to have to do a landscaping plan or a site intervention and a portion of the site, so you want to keep that information separate to your building model. So basically we're going to set up our building model now so that we can begin setting up our structural information and capturing the extent of the building we're going to be working with, and doing some preliminary investigation of the building scale, how many floors would be, etc. Now please pay attention. I've transferred all the data, has now been consolidated in one location. So all the drawing files, all the latest drawing files will be in this location, in the Cape Town folder, drawings folder. Okay. So in the Revits folder, you'll find that the same drawings, some of the same drawings will exist. I've kept some of the same information for this time being. This has been duplicated just to avoid confusion. Okay, but in essence, all the drawing file information, all the drawings that you need will be in this project data, Cape Town drawings. Okay, so all the drawings that we're going to be using are here. So I would recommend that you download all of these, put them in a good location on your computer so that you can continue working. So basically, I'm going to jump to Revit in a second. So I have created a folder on my machine where I've put all of these files where I'm going to be working. It's advisable that you maybe make a drawings folder where you keep these, because a lot of these are going to be linked and you might lose them from time to time. Just remember, you can delete these backup files at any point. I would keep them in case something goes terribly wrong with your files, but in general I've double checked all my information. I know it's working well. So you can keep the backup files, it's advisable, but I've checked all the data and I've validated all the data and it looks good. Okay, so basically we've got a site model already, which we're going to use a bit later on. But for now, this is just a basic tutorial on how to set up your building model. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Revit. Please remember, you need to go to New, start a new project driven by our Form C template. So you're going to say New, you're going to say Browse because you're going to use a template file. Now remember, I've got the BIM library, so if you don't have this information again on Teams, you can go and get this information over here. So I'd also download this and keep this in a good location. Remember, if you're using OneDrive, you can use this to link to your computer as well, but just be careful with how much information you link. You'll find that your download speeds will get affected severely because you're linking too much data. So be quite selective in the data that you want to use. So go to Revit template file. This one I might keep in my project, so remember, add shortcut to OneDrive, or you can just simply go and download the latest version. Okay, so get the latest version. Okay, so I'm going to start the project using that Revit template file, and you can see this latest template file, and I'm simply going to press open. Okay, so we're starting a new project, a building project driven by the Form C template. The way you can tell is if you look at the top here, you'll see it's project 1. If it's the name of the template file, it means you're working on the template file. Close everything and start again. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to go to Revit. I'm going to save. So I'm going to save this project. So File, Save As, Project, and I'm going to save this in my location where I'm working. Okay, so I'm going to put in Cape Town. I'm going to put this in the Revit working files. I'm going to call this building. Okay, building. Good. Save. Alright, so this is my building file. The other one's going to be my project file. You can rename these later on, but once you've linked information together, just remember you might have to go and reload information. Okay, so basically in this project view, you're going to have a whole lot of information set up. So for now, we're going to have two level systems. We're going to have datum and levels. For now, I'm just going to stick to levels, but I'll explain at some point we're going to have to switch to datum so we can get the correct information. It's pretty straightforward to start a project. You don't have to worry about true north or project north in this instance. You can also just start on the site. It doesn't really matter. In this instance, I'm going to start on the site view. Just remember, the site view, if you go and look at the information here, it's actually associated to level 0. So just remember that. So level 0 and site are the same view, except in site view, your view range is set very high so that you're looking down from a bird's aspect. Okay, remember level 0, this one's level, so go to view range, you'll find that this is very limited. Okay, so it means that you're only seeing the floor information associated to this level. okay, or the level information. So in site, the reason why I want site, I want to see this project base point and survey point. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to insert, I'm going to go to link CAD. I've prepared a services drawing for you that you're going to use to generate your building. Okay, so you're going to go link. Here I'm going to go to working files, I'm going to go to this Revit site. You need to download this site services drawing from that location I explained earlier. Now remember, this is a meters drawing, okay, and I'm only going to link it into this view only because I don't want this information polluting my other views. Okay, so internal origin to internal origin, I'm going to press OK. Good. Now you can double check if this is in meters, or you'll see straight away that this is actually, because the level information looks correct, and you can see this is the right type of scale. If you've got any doubts, you can go and you can go to the modify tab and you can simply measure something on the drawing. Okay, so you can start measuring and you can see that this information is correct. Okay, alright, so that's great. Now, I'm going to unpin this drawing file and I'm going to move it. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to be quite accurate. So hover on this bit of line work and I go SE, snap end, means that it snaps on the endpoint, and I'm going to put this right at our origin. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to select this information again. I'm going to use the rotate tool, place it right on the center mark, and I'm going to rotate this. And if you hold your cursor out quite far, it'll start telling you, it'll start snapping to vertical or horizontal. Okay, so I'm going to snap this horizontal, and you'll see that this is snapped perfectly horizontal. Okay, and remember, this is going to be our site boundaries and our site extent. The next thing I'm going to do, just to start getting everything set up correctly, is I'm going to move my elevation markers and put them on the right side of the building. Please note you need to select both. So there's an elevation marker and an elevation body. You need to move both of these. So I'm selecting both and I'm moving them quite close and quite central to the building. We'll switch these off later on because typically we don't show this information on our floor plans. Okay, I'm just making sure that I move this information to the right location. Now, your elevation, you'll see when you select the elevation body and not the marker, this is the marker, you'll notice you can see you can set how far the elevation will look, how deep it will look in essence. So I'm just making sure that I look right through the building. So set this up very quickly. Okay, that's great. All right. So I've set all that information up. I've got my site information in. Okay. So if we go to our elevation markers now, you're going to start seeing that we have elevation markers everywhere. Okay, so I need to start fixing all this information and making this information work around the extent of my building. Okay, very important. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to view and I'm going to create a scope box. Now, a scope box controls levels, grids. Okay, so it controls a lot of that information and controls the 3D extents thereof. Okay, I'll give you a separate video that will explain this in more depth, but in essence, I'm going to create a scope box around my building. Now make sure that the scope box includes the elevation markers. So it includes the elevation markers. Remember, you can move these and get them closer to the building at any stage. If you don't do this, sometimes your elevation markers won't see the levels correctly. Okay, so I've done that very quickly. I'll look at my levels in a second. The next thing I'm going to do while I'm in this view, I'm going to start setting up my grid system. For now, I'm just going to document the existing boundaries as a grid line, as a series of grid lines. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Architecture, I'm going to go to grid. Now, when you first start drawing a grid, I'm going to select this point here and draw up, and you'll see it'll draw vertical. Now, horizontal, you might want to use numbers, and vertical letters. You need to pick the right method to do. So whatever method you started with, letters or numbers, you'll see it will continue using that method. So here I'm just clicking, dragging up, clicking, dragging up, and you see it's creating the levels as I want. I might change my scale 1 to 200 in this view for now. So you can see I've picked up those levels. Now I'm going to pick up this level from there to there. Now this level, I'm going to double click on the head and change it to a letter, usually capitals. Now I'm going to continue creating grids. Okay, remember you can also drag and copy these, but for now I'd like you to drag this out and get used to this. Now I'm going to go and select these corners now and drag this out. Okay, don't worry, making things align up at the moment. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, Now that I've got all my grids kind of set up, I'm going to click one, I'm going to right click on all of them, I'm going to go select all instances in view. You'll see it'll make them all selected. Now in your properties section, just remember, some of yours might have it here. If this is missing, your properties or your project browser, you'll need to go to view and you'll need to go and switch that information on here. Okay. However, with your grids selected, what you need to do now is you need to associate that scope box to, so what it's doing in essence, your scope box will control the information on how the grids would look. And remember, we've enclosed our site with the scope box. So it means now I can control these a lot better than trying to control these individually. Okay, this is the power of Revit. When you start understanding how things connect, it's very quick to edit and process information. Okay, I'm going to select one of the grid heads. I want to see the grid heads on both sides, so I've just literally selected the family type and I've changed the symbol so that it will be visible on both sides. Okay, so quite quickly I've set up my basic site boundary information, I've set up my scope box, I've set up some levels. Okay, sorry, I've set up some grids. Alright, now it doesn't matter what view you go to, you'll notice you're going to start seeing your grids. Okay, so you're going to see your grids, so it doesn't matter what elevation you go to, you're going to start seeing all of this information working together. One last thing I might want to set up before I continue is my section. So remember, we're going to have a section through here. This section will change, but for now it's just about getting my project set up with some basic section information and elevation information. Okay, you can grab this head, move this closer. Good. Grab another section. Okay, for now I'm going to leave the section name pretty vague. Change that. So I'm just changing it to heads and then breaking the section line. Okay, so remember, in sections you'll start seeing these appearing. So section 1, I can rename this now. So I can call that A. Okay. This one, F2, shortcut to rename. I'm going to go B. Okay, so this is just a good workflow to get your drawing set up correctly. Okay, so now I've got all of that information set up. Now if I go to my elevation view, now you'll notice I've got levels. Okay, now these levels, there's two types of levels that we use. So there's a level that it references. So if I go to VG and I go to site and I switch on my project base point, if I go to site and I switch on my project base point, okay, press apply. You'll notice that my level and this project base point are on the exact same. If I move the level up, you'll notice it. If I go and measure this from there to there, you'll notice the exact same level. If I change this level back to 0, okay, so this is referencing this project base point. So just remember that. VG, I'm going to switch that off for now, just in case I move it. Okay, switch it off, side, project base point. Okay, press play. Okay, now I'm going to select this level. I'm going to change the distance between the levels. So select the top level. You'll notice that these dynamic dimensions appear, and it allows you to change these very quickly. So I'm going to make this 3600, so level 0, level 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a series of levels, and I'm going to change this level to datum. So I'm going to change this to project datum, because we're going to use a datum for this project, but at any point in the project you can go back and you can change these back, and we'll use some other levels later on. I'll explain how we use above sea level, but for the rest of this year, just to understand, we're going to adopt this datum approach, okay, based on the information that RB is giving you. Alright, so now I'm going to simply go and add a couple of levels. I'm going to start with 8 levels. Okay, so I'm going to go to View, and Architecture tab. Here we can go and start adding levels. Okay, so every time you create a level, you'll notice a level with the blue marker will have an associated floor plan and ceiling plan. So I'm going to start creating some levels. Now you don't have to get this 100% accurate. It's just about creating the right amount of levels. Remember, we're going to link this into our site model, and we're going to add some more information to make sure that it ties up with what you're expecting to see and the limits that you've been provided for your project. Okay, so remember, all projects will have height restrictions, etc. Okay, So I'm going to go to 8 levels. Fantastic. Now I'm going to create a basement quickly. So now I'm going to change this to B1. B1, and what's quite amazing is, yes, change all the views for me as well. I'm going to create one more level, and this will be my basement too. And you'll notice that Revit is where we left off, it carries on from. So that's fantastic. Now, I've got a series of levels. I'm going to select all the levels in the project. I'm going to go select all instances in view. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure that they work with that scope box that I've created. So now you can see our grids are working quite smartly, and our levels are starting to work quite smartly as well. And it doesn't matter what view I go to now, I'm always going to see the correct information. Okay, so go back to west elevation. It doesn't matter what elevation you use to set up your elevations and your levels for now. Great. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the annotate tab, and I'm going to use aligned dimensions. So from level 0, I'm going to go and select all the levels above ground. Okay, so I'm selecting all of these. So there's quite a neat tool when you use dimensions. You'll notice when you've finished selecting all of these, I can click the equal button. So what this does is it will distribute all the levels equally. Okay, now I can select any level. Now I want to change this to 3600. Now you would have noticed it's changed all of these to 3600 at a click of a button. Likewise with the basement, these I might make to 400 for now, and I'll do this manually just to show you how easy it is to do it manually. Okay, so remember, level 0 will be in essence our ground level, and then basement 1 and 2, and then we have our floor levels. Okay, so I can start adjusting my scope box. Remember, the scope box will never print. It's just a visual cue on how to control all this information. Okay, so I can delete this dimension. So you can just remove that unequal and delete that dimension for now. Okay, so basically I've got all of my level information set up. Okay, so now I've got all my level information set up. I've got all my elevation markers set up, etc., etc. It doesn't matter what view I go to now. You'll notice I'm going to be looking at the same information again and again and again. Okay, just remember I'm using the side view for now, so I can have a bird's eye view of the whole building. Okay. The last thing we're going to quickly create is an in-place mass, and this is where we're going to do some conceptual design. So basically you start with the conceptual mass. This is where you can start linking in a format project file, so you can export this information to format and then start creating a building in format and then plug that in later and then resume the modeling process from there. Okay, but for now we're going to start off with a conceptual mass. A conceptual mass allows you to do a lot of the feasibility studies and area studies for your building and for your project. However, they do come with a bit of a limitation in the sense that they're not always visible, so you always have to make sure that show mass on floors is on. If this is back to show masses by views, you'll have to go and set masses to be visible by views using VG visibility graphics. Okay, but for now I'm going to say show mass by floors. Now I'm going to simply start drawing an outline of my building. So remember, our building outline will follow. I can switch this on again so I can start seeing where those blue lines are, where my site boundaries are. Okay, I can also select tab and select the site information. Remember, I can pin it now, so I can select the linked file. You'll see that it's the linked AutoCAD file, and I can isolate just that information. So isolate element, so it's basically temporary hided everything else. So now I can go and say model in place, and I'm going to create a concept. I'm going to create a concept model, and I'm going to simply just start drawing model lines. So you're going to say model lines, and you're going to start creating some lines, and I'm going to follow my site boundaries. Now, here's a quick tip. If you're going to try and work very accurately and snap to the end, if you hover a line and you go SE, you'll notice that it'll snap to the endpoint. SE, SE, hover SE, 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 SE. Great. Now it's created a series of model lines for me. Now if I go to 3D view, you would have noticed it's created a series of these closed loops. Now because I'm in a mass modeling mode or mass family mode, once I've created a closed series of loops or lines, I can say either create void or form. So create void or form. So I'm going to create a solid, this instance, Great. Now in 3D view, because everything's been set up so well, I can select this top surface. I can pull this up to the correct height. I can also use the align command. So while I'm in this edit mode, you'll notice I've got some commands here which allow you to do all kinds of wonderful things. I'm going to use the align command. I'm going to select this top floor and I'm going to align the top of the building to that. And you would notice now it's jumped to that market right at the top. That's great. You can unlock and align it. That just means if you change this level, it will adjust with that. For now, I'm going to switch that off because I might want this to be a bit free at the moment until I've finalized my levels. Okay, for now, this is just basic mass modeling. Likewise, I'm going to do the same. So use the align tool, select the bottom level, then select the bottom face. Now, if I finish the command, you would notice now I've got a mass in my project. You can also go and drag these arrows and change the shape, but let it be driven by the line work that you're drawn inside of the family. Be careful to change your mass on the fly. That does cause some other hidden problems. Now, the fact that I have levels in the project now and that's all set up, if I select the mass, I can now enable the mass floors function. So I'm going to select the mass. In the properties section, I'm going to enable all of the levels. I'm going to switch them all on. And you will notice now that it creates a series of mass floors. So it doesn't matter what floor I select on, you will notice that it starts giving me some area and it gives me the associated level, so level 5, and it's giving me a lot of area information. So here you can see perimeter, floor area. Okay, so floor volume, that's between the levels. So there's actually a lot of rich data that you can start working with now, especially if you've got GLA requirements, so coverage, FAR, floor area ratios. So all that information you can start calculating at a high level because you've got the floors now. So basically, if I go to sections and elevations now, you'll start noticing I can switch on shaded view. Just remember, I'm looking from the side, so you're not going to get all the detail, but I'll be able to select that mass floor. So I can start seeing this project from a very basic fundamental level. Okay, so while you're working, you'll notice sometimes that you're going to get a lot of tabs open at the top. Try and minimize these, so close inactive. So try and minimize that information. Okay, so you've got one tab all the time. I'm going to go back to 3D view again. Now the next step I'm going to cover, next workflow I'm going to try and resolve, is start creating a schedule so I can start documenting how much area I've got. And then explain how I can use voids to remove information from the floors. Okay, so the next step we're going to need to cover now is setting up a basic area schedule. You can put this on the sheet at a later stage, but for now I'm going to create a new schedule. I'm going to go to mass. This will change because this will be replaced by other information once you start finalizing your floor plans, for example. So I'm going to create a mass floor schedule, press OK. Now, what information do we want to see maybe? I'm going to see maybe, so let's say level. I need that information, so that's the first information I need. Floor area, I'm going to add that, so floor area, and maybe that's all I need for now. So levels and floor area. Now sorting, I want to sort this by levels. Okay, I want grand totals, but I want title and totals, and here I'm going to call this gross floor, so gross floor area. Total, press OK. Before we finish, select areas and make sure that floor areas that you specify that this will calculate totals, and press OK. Alright, so we're not going to get any more advanced than that now, but now you notice I've got a gross floor area, so my gross floor area currently is 5327, and here are my different levels and floor areas. Okay, now very neat, something to consider. You can start, if I go back to site or I go to level 0 this time, what I can start doing now is I can start using voids. So I'm going to go and edit the place in place. I'm going to create a very basic shape for now. So imagine I want a stair core in this location, so I've drawn a rectangle shape. If I go to 3D view, sometimes it is hard to see it, okay, because you're within a mass. If I select this shape and I go and say create void now, you would have noticed this will create a void and it's going to minus it from the main mass itself. Now at any point I can drag up this information. So if I drag it right through the object, you'll notice this will punch a hole through the whole. So let me do the same here. So tab, tab. But maybe that one I want to stop on ground floor, so I'm going to use the align tab. So remember that level and I align that to that level. Okay, so basically if I keep tabbing, if you keep tabbing, you can select this whole object as well, so you can edit that void. So if you tab, I can go and edit this void at any point. So if I go and edit this void now, and now I can change its shape. Okay, just undo that, my apologies. So let me just tab on it again. So at any point I can grab these edges and I can change the shape. And now if I release a command now, you can see I've changed the shape. Sometimes you want to do that. Okay, totally up to you. Now if I've finished the mass, you would have noticed now that the floor shapes and the floor areas would have adjusted to accommodate for that void. So basically area that's redundant, so like circulation, stairwells, lifts, service cores, okay, all of those, you can start planning those in the meantime, and you can start getting some basic data. So if I go to the mass floor schedule, you'll see that I can start producing some very accurate data. Okay, all right, so I'm quite happy with the progress that I've made now. I've got a very basic mass. Okay, so this is job done. So basically I've got my sections set up, I've got all my views set up for now. Okay, so if I go back to site, you see I've got my basic information set up. Remember reset temporary hide. So now I've got a lot of information pre-set up, and I can switch on my crop view because basically I want to focus on my building. So and this is where I'm going to focus primarily on my building. Okay, and some of the surrounding. So let's just pull this information back. You don't want your views polluted by unnecessary information. Pull that in that direction and pull this in this direction. Okay, but you can see everything I've created. Okay, so you can see I've got my basic floor plan set up, etc. Okay, so that's my building site. Just remember to save. Okay, in our next video, we're going to link this information into our Revit project model and establish a shared coordinate between the two files.